Hello, and welcome to the next in a series of podcasts from the Southeast Comprehensive Center. The SECC works closely with the states of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina to provide access to information, models, and materials that facilitate implementation of and compliance with NCLB. We build the capacities of states to implement the programs and goals of the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001. The following podcast was recorded live at the Southeast Comprehensive Center Response to Intervention Funding Summit on February 25th to the 26th, 2009.
This is Erin Lolich, and she is the director of the Oregon Response to Intervention Project. The Oregon Response to Intervention Project is a partnership between the Oregon Department of Education and the Tiger Tualatin School District. This project began in 2005 and currently serves 29 school districts throughout the state.
Well, good morning. We're going to pull this up in just a minute here. Thanks for having me. I am Erin Lolich, and thank you for the nice introduction. She mastered a couple of Northwest Native American names and a Croatian name in that introduction, and I appreciate that. Well, as we get set up here, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my role. I direct the Oregon RTI project, great, thanks, which is a collaboration between Tiger Tualatin and Oregon Department of Education. So by collaboration, I mean they give us money, we do the work, which works out really well for both parties. And this year we have about $800,000 that funds our project. And we have 29 school districts that are involved. So out of that $800,000, we provide flow-through funds to school districts to get their RTI systems up and running. And then we provide technical assistance and professional development to all of the districts that participate. So that money funds myself, and I have 2 teachers on special assignment that work out of my office with me. We have a full-time administrative assistant who is usually busy booking our travel and helping us coordinate all of our professional development materials. And then just this past year, we developed the Southern Oregon Regional RTI Center. So all of our support was coming out of the Portland metro area, and when we get this PowerPoint up and running, you need a converter.
Yes.
Pause on that thought for just 1 second.
Thank you.
Go. Sure. So one of the things we worked on this year was providing more regional support to districts that are located far away from Portland. And so we've been working with one of our partner school districts, Roseburg School District, to start providing that type of support. So we fund our own staff, we provide flow-through funding to other school districts, and then we provide professional development and technical assistance. Oh yay, here we go. So our goals for this morning are to share some of the key strategies that have worked for us, and then also discuss some of the common pitfalls that I see in working with different districts around this state, and how I think you might be able to avoid those. So here is a traditional district office model for a school district, where you see ELL and title, special education, all these different entities functioning independent of one another. And my guess is that often, at least in Oregon, sometimes state departments often have a similar model where departments are rather fragmented and don't have a lot of communication. Those folks are usually pretty busy within departments and don't always get a chance to communicate. And so our thinking here is that instead of operating independently, we want to start to build a community. Oh, isn't it sweet? So we replace our district office with the response to intervention approach, a community approach to funding. Works even better when my clicker's going. So a little bit about how we came to start doing this work. In 1996, in Tigard-Tualatin School District, we started working on what we called effective behavior support. At that time, there was a whole bunch of research going on down at University of Oregon around effective behavior support. That's what it was called at the time. And our district hopped on board. We had our director of assessment at the time was doing her graduate work at University of Oregon and said, you know, I really think this model makes sense as an approach to behavior for our students. And it was so successful that our school board said, you know, I really think we should do this. Our school board wanted to look at this model district-wide. And so we started it at the elementary level, and over the course of several years built our way up all the way through our high schools in developing effective behavior support, which most folks now know now as positive behavior support. And as that process was coming along, we also applied for a grant through OSEP, and we wanted to marry our reading program with our positive behavior support program. And so OSEP gave us about $900,000 over the course of 5 or 6 years to start doing that work. And that gave us money to fund, to offset some of the costs of our director of assessment, some of the costs of our literacy specialist, our district-wide literacy coordinator at the time. And it also gave each individual elementary school a few $1,000s per year to start developing some reading interventions. So not a ton of money when you spread that out across the school district over a number of years, but enough to get us started. And then our secondary schools, we had some money in our title programs there that helped us to develop, especially really strengthen our positive behavior support system at our secondary level. And in 2005, Oregon Department of Ed had noticed we've been doing this work for a while, and particularly in reading and behavior, and said, would you help us in writing the technical assistance paper for the state of Oregon? So we did that work, and then they said, would you be willing to train a few districts? And so we developed an application process and some other technical assistance materials, and we developed this training module for 5 school districts to participate in. So that first year we trained 5 school districts, and the next year we took on 9 more. The following year, an additional 9 districts, and this year we took on an additional 5 districts. At this point, we're serving 29. And we revised our technical assistance paper just last year to reflect new research and new practice in the field. So as you can see here, we are all over the state. Well, we're going to go the old-fashioned way here. We started working, I mentioned Roseburg School District is now our Southern Oregon Technical Assistance Center. If you're not familiar with Oregon, there's not a whole lot in terms of population out here. So this is the one area we haven't really served, Southeast Oregon, and that's primarily because there aren't a whole lot of students out there.
Need a laser?
Sure, thanks. Okay, so I already talked a little bit about what our funding looks like, and that funding comes through to the state of Oregon as IDA discretionary funds. So our Associate Superintendent of Public Instruction in the state of Oregon, who oversees special education, has allocated that funding specific to our project.
Out of the IDEA money?
Yes. IDA discretionary funds.
$817,000?
Yes. That's this year. In previous years, I believe we started the first year with about $200,000, so each year it's grown. Okay, so now I'm going to switch back to Tigard-Tualatin a little bit. I started my work in Tigard-Tualatin as a special education teacher, and then I became a Title I coordinator and literacy specialist before I started doing this work on the project. So I'm going to shift back and forth a little bit between talking about the project and talking about our own school district. We have 12,000 plus students. Our elementary schools have 500 to 700 kids each. Our middle schools have 900 to 1,000 students each. And then we have 2 comprehensive high schools that each, actually we have about 2,000 students in each. That's a typo there. And then one small alternative school and one charter school. And you can see our special education program is fairly proportionate. About 10% of our students are identified. Our English language learner population is about 15% and growing. Most of our English language learners are Spanish speaking, and they are really at the K-3 level and growing. We have students K-12 that are English language learners, but the majority of our population is K-3. And then I always kind of chuckle at our talented and gifted numbers and think, are we like woebegone? What's going on up there that we have so many students identified in? And 3% of those are intellectually gifted. The rest are identified as really academically, I forget what the term is, performing at pretty high academic levels. Our Title I program is reading only. It's in 6 of our 10 elementary schools. And our rate for Title I is 35% in order to be eligible. And then we have students up to 62%. District-wide, we have quite a range. We have one of the richest public schools in the state that only has 7% free and reduced, up to 62%. So there's quite a range from school to school in our SES. So for long-term funding sources in Tigard-Tualatin School District, our general fund supports our literacy specialists. We have one in every building, K-12 now. We have screening and progress monitoring that is also K-12, and that's funded through general fund dollars. Our core curriculum is funded through our general fund. So is our professional development and many of our interventions. Not all, but many. Our title dollars fund some of our intervention curricula in those 6 schools. They fund a 0.5 Title I coordinator and then part-time instructional assistants, which are our interventionists. Feel free to jump in if you have questions. Additional long-term funding sources for us, we have a foundation that's primarily parents within our school district that raise money, and that provides about half of a teacher per elementary building per year, and principals have discretion over how they use that FTE. So some of our principals have said, we're going to hire a reading teacher only, and that person's going to be there during the morning reading block and make groups at 2nd grade smaller, groups at 4th grade, wherever the data show that we have a need. Or they may hire that person as a math interventionist. So that model looks different in each of our elementary buildings. And then I put school improvement fund in red. I thought that was a long-term funding source. Our governor recently cut that with budget cuts. Those dollars were frozen, and I'm not quite sure when we're going to see them again, but I would imagine it's not going to be the next biennium, and possibly not the next biennium after that. But school improvement funds provided quite a bit for us in terms of after-school intervention programs and busing for those programs. So that has just disappeared in the last few weeks. And then we also received some money through Medicaid reimbursement. So more short-term funding sources, our PSOs are pretty active, especially in our non-title schools, and they've funded part-time interventionists and curricula for our non-title schools in the past. So where some schools have a big sale or an auction, and then they get new playground equipment, in our district, our principals have sent a really strong message to our parent and our business community that what we do in Tigard-Tualatin, what we really want to support and fund is our RTI system. And we've had great community support for that. I mentioned that the EBIS grant that we got from OSEP, and that has since disappeared, but really helped get us off the ground. And then our project, the Oregon RTI project, which we know so far will go till 2010. We don't know about beyond that. It helps to offset a portion of the salaries of some of the folks in our district office to develop training materials. And then we just get what we think of as incidental benefit from working with all these other districts, getting to share ideas, etc., there's a lot of benefit there that might not come in direct dollars, but helps us in the long run. We also applied for a federal Safe Schools Healthy Kids grant, which we received just this past summer, and that is providing us with another $4 million, and that goes over a 4-year period. So as you can see, whenever there's a chance to participate in grants or research in our district, we hop on board pretty quickly. And then another thing that we do is we contract independently with districts in Oregon that aren't participating in the project, and we provide RTI training for them, and that money generates revenue for our school district. Okay, so funding sources for you to think about. As you can see, general fund has been really important in our district, and that's something that we encourage other districts to think about in terms of sustainability. I see that as shifting now that our budget cuts are going to be so drastic in our district. We will definitely be using IDA dollars and title dollars to supplement our RTI system as much as we possibly can, as much as laws will allow us to do in future years. Other considerations for you all are Part B early intervening funds. We have not used those in Tigard-Tualatin up until now. We may start. And then PTAs and PSOs, like I said, can be amazing assets that I think folks often overlook as a source of funding this type of work. And then research and grants have been really valuable as well. So some of the big ideas that you want to think about are sustainability. I always get really nervous whenever I hear somebody describe RTI as a program instead of, or an initiative, instead of just thinking of it as the way we do business in our district or in our state, the way that we serve students. Because when I hear program or initiative, it sounds like something that could go away. And if we don't think about this long term, we're in trouble, especially when we have the economic crisis we do right now. So one way that we like to bring folks back to sustainability and prioritizing is really looking at strategic improvement goals within a school or a district and using those as the focal point of the conversation. And then the other piece is laying everything on the table. So often we'll have principals do an exercise where they write down, I would be willing to give up this for this. And of course they have to stay within their own budget. They don't get to pick on somebody else's school. They have to look at, here's everything in my budget, what would I be willing to give up, and what would I want to replace it with. So being really open about how we've funded things in the past and what's important to us. Thank you. So building community understanding and support, like I said, I think the community really needs to know why this is important, which students are getting served, and why the district is shifting resources in the way that they are. And then having a really strong message from the top down in any system. We have our state superintendent and our associate superintendents of public instruction sending a really strong message at conferences, in public forums about response to intervention and positive behavior support. They use that language on a regular basis. Our superintendent in Tigard-Tualatin sends a very strong message to staff and to the parent community that reading is the most important thing that we do. And he really supports our principals in making those tough decisions around RTI and funding. They know that they're going to have his support if they have to make a tough decision, and that gives folks just a sense of security, and I think has really helped them feel bold about making the decisions they have and knowing they have that support there. Some of the common pitfalls around funding are putting adults before students. So in one school district I visited recently, I heard about how a teacher was kept on board because they were important, that family was important to the community, and so they developed a whole Christmas program around her position because her position was ready to be cut. and they didn't want to cut her, so they developed a Christmas program just to keep her position there. And so to me that was important to the community, and yet they had so many other academic needs in their district that they were overlooking in order to protect her position. And to me, that was really sad for the students, that they missed out on some academic opportunities because the focus was so clearly on this adult's position instead of student need. And then avoiding non-discussables. As we start to do this work more and more at the secondary level, some of the non-discussables around credits in our high schools have become a big conversation. Some of the non-discussables are, why is it that there are 14 students in this advanced placement Japanese class, while our basic level English classes at the high school have 35 students in there? So issues of equity sometimes become those non-discussables that have to be brought out on the table. Rigid student grouping. So often we thought about, well, the Title I kids go here and the special ed kids go here, and we don't think about alignment of programs and how we can switch students around in a more flexible way to meet their needs. And then I've talked about some of the issues around staffing already. Another one that I see quite often is blind trust of what I call legal authorities. I think you'll get the opportunity to see Dave Tilley next door at some point today, and he's talked about how in Iowa, I've heard him speak before about how in Iowa so many of the roadblocks that they thought were related to state or federal law, as they started to really examine the law, they realized weren't roadblocks at all. So there were so many self-imposed, well, the law says this, or the authorities say this, instead of really thinking through what's the intent of the law here, and have we misinterpreted it. So I would caution you to make sure you're really clear on what the law says, and then if the law isn't working for you, to really challenge that and give that input to the folks in charge. And contract issues are a big potential hurdle for RTI, seeing folks who have contracts that don't allow for meeting time within schools. If you don't have that time for database meetings, you can often find yourself in trouble. So being really careful around the way that teacher contracts are written. And then also making sure unions are a part of the conversation as you begin to develop these systems. If unions are left out of the loop, I've seen grievances happen where there really was no need, there was just a miscommunication between school district and the union, and had they had better communication, that could have been avoided. Lost my cartoon here. So the other big thing to keep in mind is Rome wasn't built in a day, so start slowly and build your system over time. And you are welcome to all of the resources we have on our website. And you're welcome to call or email me anytime.